we've let things unfold with this whole Blue Origin.
We're going to come with the debunks that nobody else is sharing. We're going to be able to show that this whole Blue Origin thing and all the space travel, the ISS, the SpaceX, how all these things are impossible based on pressure.
So the reality in the realm that we find ourselves in was particularly made super specifically. And unfortunately, the specifications within the realm clearly outline that it's not possible to go very high in altitude. First of all, there's no oxygen. That's the first problem that we find when we start to rise in elevation. It really ultimately seems like the creation that we're in is very, very limited. We're not flying to the moon. We're not flying into quote unquote outer space.
All right. So we've got air pressure at sea level. But then there's a gradient as you go from sea level up, and it's a very short window. And so we have these fine metrics of what makes it possible to get to certain altitudes. We're going to be taking a look at an amateur rocket that's incredible, that's got a lot of data, and we're going to be able to see what that maximum altitude really is.
So it's going to be interesting when we get into the rocket stuff. So I was lucky enough as a teenager, got into making rockets and shooting them off into the sky. They fly really fast. They get thrown up into the sky. These Blue Origin, SpaceX, NASA launches are like the slowest you've ever seen. It's like a balloon taking off. So the rockets that I built were basically like tissue paper rolls. They were as light as you possibly could make it. Anything that flies has to be made from the lightest steel. Aluminum, airplane aluminum. It has to be the thinnest that you can possibly make it.
Yeah. So this channel here, this is Kip Dugradus. So he launched a rocket. It looks like 2 years ago, and he's got all this data here. This is the stuff that we absolutely love. And so his amateur rocket made it to 293,000 feet. So with this chart right here, I've got actual lowest air pressure, and then this goes up to 50,000 feet. So at the Dead Sea, the lowest point on Earth, we have a PSI. So the pressure is actually very, very intense, 15.5 pounds per square inch at the Dead Sea. You can see that as soon as you go up in elevation, what you have is a drop in air pressure. This is actually the way airplanes figure out their altitudes. To fly at 30,000 feet, all you have to do is fly where the air pressure is 4.36 psi, and you'll be at 30,000 feet. So here's our bigger scale, where we've got the 14.696 at sea level, and then at 250,000 feet, 0. So what is this? Is it a vacuum? No, it's just an absolute, there is no pressure, there is no air. The thing that we call air, oxygen, nitrogen, whatever label you want to put to this gaseous thing, it doesn't exist at 250,000 feet. So here is what real rockets look like. And so here's your first stage. And now here's a second stage. So first stage, second stage, and it's on this rail system. Length 12.3 feet. Total weight 87 pounds. Ron was talking about how toilet paper rolls or cardboard, stuff like that. You want it to be as light as possible if you want it to go as high as possible.
Like you had said, Jason, this is actual rocketry. Right? This is the real deal. And I want you as the viewer, do you think that what you see from NASA, SpaceX, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, does it in any way match what we're about to see? Please ask yourself that.
So this view is really cool. This right here represents the actual pitch data. And so we have feet per second over here. We have altitude in feet. We have flight time. Then we have Mach and then we have G load. So here comes the count.
Launch detected.
So I think I saw 16.6 G load. We have flown for a total of 2.7 seconds, and we're at 1,506 feet already. So I'll run a couple more seconds here.
Booster burnout.
What? That was the end of stage 1, everybody. 9.1 seconds, and the booster is already burned out. And look at our G load. We're at pulling a -3 Gs. So the rocket is super decelerating at this point. It's pulling negative Gs. If you were in a real rocket, this is when people red out. This is when everything rushes to your head when you're pulling negative Gs and you're sitting upright. So we only had a 10-second burn from that first stage, but our altitude, we're up to almost 15,000 feet, and watch the altitude climb.
$30,000 feet. 35,000.
What happened? At 35,000 feet, all of a sudden, boom, the second stage went, and our G load went up. It went up to about 10
instantly.
And now all of a sudden, we have an even shorter burn than the first stage.
Sustainer ignition. 40,000. 50,000 feet.
You can see it's also rifling like a bullet.
Sustainer burnout.
That was it. That was it. By 70,000 feet, second stage is already completely burned out. So the 70,000 feet is a threshold where there is not enough air left for combustion. Combustion's over. But watch our altitude
80,
now.
000.
This helps you visualize
120,000.
the way this rocket's moving.
$200,000 feet.
What I want to point out here, what we see taking place is the fact that there's no atmosphere, barely any. And what you're seeing is the rocket is still rising at 1,680 feet per second, and it's tumbling. It's tumbling head over tail, over and over, rolling through the sky, because it's basically flying upwards through nothing.
See, it's going backwards up right now.
Yeah, it's such a weird
It's going
tumble.
backwards
and,
up.
and still traveling 1,250 feet per second upwards, everybody. This is what we're trying to say. Space travel is fake AF, okay? There is nothing to push off of. If this thing was to shoot its propellant, it wouldn't even move it anymore. It would continue to tumble at the same rate and speed that it is. That's why there's no third stage, right, Jay? What are they going to do?
Yeah, there's no air. It burned out at 70,000 feet. Red's
Rhetoric and Astronomy Live have some explaining to do. If they want to join us live, we can go through this and they can explain to us why this amateur rocket is tumbling like this. Yet we don't see any of this from SpaceX or NASA. They continue to burst and continue to use rockets in outer space. And this thing's only 200. So now we're almost at the height of the Blue Origin.
We'll get to an apogee. It stops ascending. It pops its chute, and you can see the chute's been released.
The chute doesn't even do anything.
Deployment charge has fired. Max altitude.
It's just flopping there. It's not getting taut. The rope is not becoming taut.
Yeah, now you'll see that the speed will begin to pick up again as it's descending.
293,485.
The chute is not open whatsoever because there's
Mach 4.18.
no air up there.
It's not taut. It's not pulling. It's not catching anything. There's nothing to catch. There's nothing to pull off. Look, it's loose. There's nothing. This is absolute proof. Nail in the coffin. We could turn the podcast off now. Everything you've ever seen from NASA and SpaceX is fake. This proves it right here. This amateur rocket just destroyed fake space.
288,000 feet. Now it's starting to go into free fall, and it actually is going to free fall at 9.8 meters per second squared, and it will free fall, it'll accelerate until it gets down to the 70,000 foot range, where it starts to get into air again. And then that's when the parachute's going to start to open up. But 250,000 feet, no air.
No air. There's not a dome. Sorry, fake flat earthers and people that got fooled by a bad translation from the King James, who, hired, who was it? Shakespeare to edit the Bible. Okay. There's no such thing as a dome, right? There's a gradient. You're in a virtual reality. The gradient goes from nothing.
Zero at 250,000 feet.
But there's no pressure there. There's no air. It's just void. It's empty space. It's not a vacuum sucking, pulling all of the Earth's atmosphere away. It's just
that would be a negative pressure.
Where's the negative pressure on your scale, please?
No vacuum.
Where's the vacuum? What?
It's just zero.
Show me the minus. Obviously, there's a negative.
Vacuum. No.
What?
It's just zero. There is no negative. Yeah. So the parachutes aren't going to do anything until you start getting down into the 60, 50, 45, 40,000. Once you start getting down into this range, then your parachute's actually going to spread out, and it's going to have something to resist against. You know that your typical skydives are limited to about 10 to 12,000 feet. This is where there's enough air for your parachute to work. And also, if you went higher without oxygen, you would die.
You're going to die. You can't breathe. There's no air. So where's MC Toon? Where's Fight the Flat Earth? Where are the quote unquote globe proponents? Where are these guys? We'll bring you on. If you got a Zoom account, you can come on and please defend your fake space. We have been waiting for over a decade for you guys to prove to us that space is real. This video right here, like I said, we can turn the podcast off, done, completed, fake space debunked, just at the untaughtness of the rope of the parachute. You can't push if that thing's not pulling, you can't push. And so what they do is they actually shoot these things up, film it, and then they lace together that footage, that smoke plume, in with the CGI of their fake rockets. Anyone who's seen the Blue Origin takeoff or NASA Space Shuttle takeoff or SpaceX takeoff obviously can tell that it's not real. It looks so fake because it is fake.
So there is no G. It does just reach this pinnacle, its apogee,